Okay, so how do I begin this video exactly? So I've already made it clear in this channel before that I really like murder drones, and while I haven't talked about the Muppet movies before, through some of my videos you can tell that I like them quite a bit. Now, while it seems like they both have nothing in common, there's actually two things that they have in common that I really like amongst both of them. The first thing is that both of them have characters that I just really enjoy, both because they're charming and that they're just really funny. And speaking of funny, the second reason is that they're just really funny. It's just I feel like the first time I watch these things, it feels like most of the jokes landed for me. Now you may be wondering to yourself, Christmas, why'd you make this video? Well, I have a hard time trying to decide that myself, but I think it's because that I was getting into murder drones and the Muppets at the same time, and I thought to myself one day, well, there's 8 murder drones episodes and 8 theatrically released Muppet movies. So why not try and compare them together? So that is exactly what I aim to do today. I'm going to be reviewing every Murder Drones episode and every theatrically released Muppet movie to decide which one is better than each other. However, I want to list just a few things before we get started. First of all, I'm making this video partially as an improvement to my Murder Drones review video, because I felt like that video had a bit of flaws to it, with the biggest one being that it felt like more I was summarizing the show than really I was actually reviewing it. So I aim to actually review it today rather than only do a summary of it. Secondly, I'm of course reviewing the Muppet movies, however only the 8 theatrical ones as stated in the beginning, so no TV movies and no 40-minute specials. Plus I heard the TV movies were bad anyway, so I don't think it's worth watching.
What do these do? Nothing, they're a nipple.
Finally, it's probably obvious, but I'm going to be comparing them based on episode and movie number, so like based on when they came out or based on what order they should be in. And I'll keep my tally on whether the Muppets or Murder Drones are better, and by the end I'll reveal who has the highest score. And with that said and done, time to get into this really stupid video. Starting off with a pretty easy one for me, we got the Murder Drones pilot versus the Muppet movie. Starting off with the Murder Drones pilot, this episode is definitely a lot better than I gave it credit for in my Murder Drones video. For a very brief summary of this episode, the main character, Uzi Dorman, who is a worker drone, wants to kill all the disassembly drones because they're trying to kill the worker drones. But after accidentally letting them in, she ends up working with one of the disassembly drones named N to defeat the other two, V and J. Now, like I said, I have a bit of changed thoughts on this episode, and I think the biggest reason is that when I made my original video, I realized that I didn't really have that many valid complaints as to why I didn't really like this episode as much as the other ones outside of the animation is bad. And while I'll get to that complaint can mostly be excused by the fact that this was a pilot before, you know, the full series actually took off. One of the things I realized that makes this episode so good is the humor, because it probably has some of the most iconic lines in the entire show. Just to name a few, there's Robo Jesus, did you just slap me with that arm, I love doing anything, damn the well-made quality and assured durability of JC Jensen products. I think I could go on. That's not even including some of the background jokes like stop, drop, and reflect on why you deserve this, or Khan just talking about how he likes doors more than his own daughter. Most of these jokes, regardless of what they were, I found mostly to be funny. And of course, along with the humor, the other thing that's really funny about this episode is the characters, because all of them are just really great and charming in their own unique way. Uzi acting like a stereotypical teenager is just great. V being a psychopath is really funny to me, and is my spirit animal. It's also the job of a pilot episode to do a good job at introducing the characters, and I think it does a good job at that too. Like for example, Uzi's introduced by showing off a presentation to her class about why she wants to kill the disassembly drones, even though that's not what the presentation called for. This episode also gives you a good introductory as to the world that Murder Drones takes place in. Set on a planet where all humans are gone because of what they did and the robots have to take over for them. It's definitely a unique and interesting spin on the idea of robots taking over. Obviously though, nothing can be perfect, so here's some problems I have with it. First of all, as I alluded to earlier, the animation is not that great. I understand that it's just a pilot, but I still don't really like it, and it feels off-putting when you compare it to most other episodes. It makes sense why it's like this because it was made before Meta Runner ended, and Meta Runner did have the same animation style as the pilot for Murder Drones, but I feel like it worked better in Meta Runner because all the characters were human and not robots. And that human movement combined with the robots just doesn't feel right. And don't you worry, because this time I actually have a proper complaint for this that isn't just the animation. Now obviously you guys probably know this show if you're watching this video, and you know that it's a comedy horror show. But aside from this one really good part where Uzi is tricked by End's reflection, this episode doesn't really have a lot of good horror moments, or just any horror moments in general. Like, I guess the idea of the disassembly drones themselves is supposed to be scary, but once you get to know them, they're just kind of funny and not really that menacing. And when I say that, I mean like the audience wouldn't find them scary, not the characters in the show. I understand why they still would find them scary. However, I think I've made it very obvious that the goods definitely outweigh the bad, so I really do indeed like this episode. With all this said though, do I think it's better than the Muppet movie? No. Now, even though I talked about how I like the Merge Jones pilot more than I did before, that doesn't change the fact that even from the beginning, I thought that the Muppet movie was always going to be better than this episode. So the plot of this movie is that Kermit the Frog gets convinced by this Hollywood agent guy to go to Hollywood and Worldwide Studios because they're opening auditions for frogs. On his way to Hollywood, Kermit encounters the other Muppet characters like Fozzie, Gonzo, and Miss Piggy, and everyone else shared the same dream as Kermit, which is really nice. And speaking of Kermit's dream, I really love it because it's not just, oh, he wanted to go to Hollywood and become really famous. He wanted to go to Hollywood because he wanted to make millions of people happy, which is, in my opinion, such a sweet and wholehearted motivation, and I really like it. And this also helps show off the kind of character Kermit is, where he's just a really sweet guy, you know? I think Fozzie and Kermit are my two easily most favorite characters in not just the movie, but in the Muppets universe in general, because they're just really funny, and I just like their personalities a lot. And just like Merge Jones, the jokes in this movie are really top-notch. Kermit telling the agent that there's alligators and has to lip read it to him. Fozzie unintentionally making a fat sailor angry from one of his jokes, so he has to change it up midway just to make it right. Fozzie originally agreeing not to be partners with Kermit, but then 1 second later agrees. And of course, one of the best jokes in the whole movie, the screenplay joke. So basically, at some point in the movie, Fozzie and Kermit encounter a group called the Electric Mayhem, which is comprised of Dr. Teeth and no one else that I really care about. Then when they ask Kermit and Fozzie the question of, why are you guys here, Fozzie attempts to recap the entire movie up until that point. However, Kermit says that it's going to bore the audience, so instead of doing that, Fozzie just gives them the screenplay to the movie, and they just tell them to read it until they show up. And this would be funny on its own, but then they make it funnier because later in the movie, when the car breaks down that the other Muppet characters were in, and the Electric Mayhem somehow manages to find them because of the screenplay that Kermit left them. This is genuinely like comedic gold right here. And also, I can't forget to mention the songs in this movie, because they're all really good. My two favorites being Rainbow Connection and Moving Right Along, because Rainbow Connection has such a magical feeling to it and fits very well with Kermit's current situation he's in, and Moving Right Along is just kind of a fun, energetic song that I really like. Also, I almost forgot to talk about the main villain of this movie, Doc Hopper, who I think is a pretty good villain. Though I think the way he goes about doing his plan is kind of stupid. Like, why would the talking frog not understand the fact that he's being advertised a frog leg selling business? But despite that, I still think that him and his assistant Max, when paired together, are really funny. Now, I think my only really big issue with this movie is the relationship between Miss Piggy and Kermit. At first it's nice and cute, and I really enjoy it, but then we get to the date scene, and while the date scene's fine, there's then the one part where Miss Piggy has to answer a phone call from an agent she has. But with how long she was taking, Kermit just thought that she left him. By the way, this transitions into one of the best songs in the whole movie. But it turned out she was actually just being kidnapped by Doc Hopper the whole time. Then Kermit surrenders to him, and when Kermit's about to get his brain turned to mush, Miss Piggy beats up just a bunch of guys just to save him. And yet, right after that whole thing happens, and Miss Piggy gets her call from her actual agent, she just leaves Kermit. And that scene genuinely kind of felt like the writers just pulled something last minute. But other than that, I genuinely really love this movie, and it's probably one of my favorite movies of all time. And also, I'm not going to show it at all on screen, but if you're not going to watch this movie, at least see the ending, because genuinely, the more and more I watched it, the more it wanted to make me cry. So in short, this movie is both really funny, but also really heartwarming at times, and I enjoy it for that. And because of what I said earlier, the first point of this video is going to the Muppets. Next up, we got Murder Jones's Heartbeat versus The Great Muppet Caper, and already I am struggling to decide which one is better in this situation. Starting off with episode 2, the plot is about Uzi and N trying to investigate what's going on inside the facility because Jay is now this like eldritch abomination of some kind and they have to stop her. This episode was also a really good one, and in my opinion, an improvement over the pilot. The humor, in my opinion, is probably better than the pilot. Like, I think there's better jokes in it, because even though there's not as many iconic ones, there's still a lot of funny ones. And talking about how he's a spaceship pilot after he finds it out, V just using a bubble blower for some reason, and just becoming Chainsaw Man. Just like with episode 1, I could go on about the jokes because they are really funny. I mean, this one sequence I'm showing right now has like 3 really funny jokes crammed into it all at once. They also looked at the first episode and thought, man, there's not enough horror in it, so let's gift it 50 plus more scenes than it did in the last episode. The scene where it mimics other worker drones and the scene where it took the second victim of it are just really good scenes. At first it's like, yeah, you can definitely see through them, aside from this bozo that doesn't. But then it goes to somehow mimicking multiple drones at once and multiple props just to trick this one character into thinking that she's in a real-life crime scene. Also, the animation's improved, but I won't really talk about that because it's kind of obvious. Also, quickly going back to the horror elements, I really like as well how the monster that Jay has become is like slowly being set up as the episode goes on, where we get brief glimpses until we actually get to see the whole thing, and it's really terrifying, and I love the design. Honestly, my only issue with this episode is that sometimes I feel like it could be a bit boring, and I really don't know why I feel this way about it. The only explanation I can think of is that maybe this episode just makes me wish I was on episode 3, because that episode is just so much better, but I still really like this episode, and I think it was just an overall improvement of the pilot. Now, to talk about the Great Muppet Caper, the plot is about Kermit, Fozzie, and Gonzo going to Great Britain in order to figure out who stole the jewels of this woman. Also, again, this movie is really funny, with jokes like people mixing up Fozzie and Kermit because they look very similar to each other. And this is like a reoccurring joke throughout the movie too, it's really funny. Now, I'm not going to do the thing again where I list multiple jokes that I think are funny, because I do think a lot of them are funny, so I'll just show this clip because it's really funny.
It's amazing. You are 100% wrong. I mean, nothing you've said has been right.
This one joke perfectly summarizes how I feel about all the jokes in this movie, honestly. I also think that the theming around Great Britain is very good, with all the outfits and British accents, you know? It's very nice, and I like the theme this movie's going for. Also, of course, all the characters in this movie are just as great as they were in the last one, and any of the new ones are also really fun additions. And just like with the last movie, the songs are all also bangers, and I feel like the visuals attributed to the songs are much more high effort than the ones in the Muppet movie, with some absolute bangers like Hey a Movie and Happiness Hotel. Honestly, I don't have much to say about this movie other than I just enjoyed it. It might be a bit of a problem that I don't have much to say about it, but I don't really know. It's definitely not trying to be like an emotional and goofy movie at the same time like the original Muppet movie was trying to be. It's just simply trying to be a goofy movie and nothing else. However, I don't really mind that much, since pretty much everything from the original Muppet movie was intact. And they also improved Miss Piggy and Kermit's relationship, which I think is good. Now, like I said earlier, I did have a bit of a harder time deciding whether I thought Murder Jones Episode 2 was better, or if this movie was better. However, in the end, I think this is just another point for the Muppets. I'm sorry, I like this movie more. Next up, we got Murder Jones the Promening versus the Muppets Take Manhattan. Starting with Murder Jones Episode 3, the plot is about Uzi having to go to prom even though she doesn't want to, and she doesn't have anyone to go with, because N, who was probably the only person she could go with, she had already heard the feelings of from the last episode. In the end, though, she teams up with him and V in order to stop a character named Doll, who was hinted at in the last episode, and has gotten a main antagonistic role in this episode. Now, I genuinely mean it when I say that this is probably one of the best episodes of the whole show. I think one contributing factor is probably the characters, because even though they're great in every episode, this is probably like the first episode where you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm invested in these characters for sure. It also still feels like the solver is a mystery, while they still slowly reveal more about it for you to connect the dots. Also, while there is comparatively less compared to most other episodes, this episode still has quite a few funny moments. And maybe this is just a me thing, but I feel like all the shading and rendering is just improved from most other episodes. Like, it just looks really good. I don't know why, to me, it just does. However, the crown jewel of this episode is easily the fight between Uzi and Doll. From the visuals, to how they use random items as weapons, to the music, it's genuinely so good. With easily the best part being when Uzi grabs this one knife on the beat of the music. To me, it's just so cool that they managed to plan all that out. Also, I kind of like V and Doll being the two focuses of this episode, just because it's good to see them being fleshed out more from simply just background characters in the last two episodes. The only other thing I have to say about this episode is that I just really like the prom outfits that everyone's given. They look nice. My only issue with this episode is that the resolution between Uzi and End feels kinda quick and a bit rushed. However, I don't have really that many problems with it, since I feel like that's mostly episode 2's fault for even doing that in the first place, which I probably should have mentioned during episode 2, but hey, I'm mentioning it now. But if there's any episode I can tell you guys to go watch from this show specifically, it's definitely this one, because while I also think it's good, most Murder fans have claimed this to be probably one of the best episodes of the whole show. Next up, we got The Muppets Take Manhattan, and based on reviews I saw of this movie before watching it, I feel like I already had a good idea of where this movie stacked up compared to Murder episode 3. Before I get into my thoughts though, a quick summary of this movie is that all the Muppets have graduated from college and they made a musical called Manhattan Melodies. They then want to actually go to Manhattan and publish this musical on Broadway. Yada yada, two things happen, and now they get to do the musical. As much as I hate to admit it, this is the only thing in this entire video that I'm going to be talking about that I don't think is good. I don't think it's bad, but I just think it's okay and not good. In my opinion, the big problem with this movie is that it just tries to add too many things to the point where it just feels like it's padding out runtime. All of the Muppet characters leave each other and go their separate ways until Kermit can publish the musical, which is just really dumb and pointless, because why not just stay with him until he does actually publish the musical? I know technically it was because of an argument that Kermit got into with the other Muppets before, but that could just be fixed with a simple apology from Kermit. They don't have to leave each other because of this. There's a part of the movie where Miss Piggy dreams about everyone being babies, and I'm pretty sure this is only just a backdoor pilot for the Muppet Babies spin-off show, and the only thing that actually happens during this part is a song that I hate way too much. And then there's also the fact that Kermit gets amnesia towards the end of the movie. However, I probably would have been fine with this if they removed, like, the other two things, and this was the only thing they had to worry about. Like, if the entire movie just was about Kermit having amnesia, this would probably be a lot better. Also, the scene where Kermit gets run over by a car, which causes him to get amnesia, is really funny because of how poorly it's edited. However, because of the good characters and some pretty good jokes, this movie is safe from being a pretty bad movie. And also, I gotta be honest, the songs are just kind of fine. They're not really that good. Outside of that one baby song, I hate that song. But yeah, with everything stated, it's very obvious that this is the first point I'm going to give to Murder Drones. Next up, we got Murder Drones Cabin Fever versus The Muppet Christmas Carol. Starting off with Murder Drones episode 4, Uzi goes to this one campsite so that way she can learn more about what's happening to her and also what's going on with her mom. However, when she's there, she ends up getting corrupted by the Absolute Solver, and then she starts killing everyone. Something I really like about this episode is its theming, because it has a nice, like, camp aesthetic to it, which, you know, is the whole point, but it's emphasized even more with the fact that N and V are just dressed up in canceller outfits. I think this episode, though, is at its absolute best when it tries to do horror stuff. Like, I mean, the scenes where Uzi is being corrupted by the Solver are really horrific. Also, I really like the concern that N still has for Uzi. It feels genuinely real how big their relationship has become now. I also really like their conversation they have at the end of the episode. It feels very genuine, and like N really just wants to help Uzi out with the problems that she's been struggling with. This episode also has one of the best jokes in the series where Lizzie has a bomb right next to her, groans at it, and then it explodes. Other than that, this episode was very good and very enjoyable, and I don't have much else to say about it. Now, for The Muppet Christmas Carol, I don't have to say much in terms of the summary, since it's just the original Christmas Carol story, except some of the characters have been replaced with the Muppets. This movie is still great, however, with characters like Ebenezer Scrooge being a good example of that because he's performed really well, and I like his character arc throughout the movie, even though that's the classic Christmas Carol story, but still, I like it. Also, I like the Ghost of Christmas Past. He's a nice, jolly old fellow. The songs in this movie are pretty good, but I wouldn't say they're like the most memorable Muppet songs of all time. I like the dynamic between Gonzo and Rizzo, especially Gonzo calling Rizzo an idiot. That was really funny. I also like the scene where Scrooge just shows up at Kermit's house and pretends to be like the way he always was before he learned his lesson, and then he just reveals the fact that he's going to increase Kermit's salary, and then they're just shocked by that fact, and I like that. But yeah, once again, don't got much to say. It was a very good and enjoyable time. The only reason I'm not keeping these sections going on longer is because I feel like, outside of the first section, if I was saying anything along the lines of I like these characters and I think these moments were funny, then I'd just be repeating myself. The only thing that was harder for me was trying to decide whether Cabin Fever was better or worse than the Muppet Christmas Carol. However, I'm really sorry, Muppet fans, but I'm giving this one to Merge Runs Episode 4. I still love A Muppet's Christmas Carol, don't get me wrong, I just think that Cabin Fever just had a lot more to offer in terms of stuff I liked. Alright, now we got Merge Runs Episode 5 Home versus Muppets Treasure Island. I wish I could have compared this movie to Merge Runs Episode 4 because this movie has a song called Cabin Fever in it. I think that's really funny. Anyway, starting off with Merge Runs Episode 5, the plot is about Uzi going into the minds of N and V so that way she can figure out what happened to them in the past before this new character named Sin can wipe their memories. If I could give my thoughts on this episode with just one word, it would be overhated. I say that not because people think it's bad, but because it's just like the least appreciated episode of the show. I mean, I definitely can see some of the complaints with this episode, like some of the serious moments being interrupted by humor, which, while was a problem in some of the other episodes, was probably most prevalent here. Some people also think this should have been just a general flashback episode rather than have Uzi as a crow in this episode, though I don't really mind this one as much as the other ones. However, I like that this episode introduced Sin and Tessa, who are pretty two fun characters that I really enjoy. And just like I said for episodes 3 and 4, I really like the theming of this old mansion style. I also like this episode just simply for being a backstory to the disassembly drones and the Absolute Solver. And I love the way this episode begins off with the VHS tape. It's very creative, and they actually just changed the intro mostly to fit that vibe. But yeah, in my opinion, this episode was pretty good, and a pretty overhated one at that. Now for Muppets Treasure Island, it's once again just a story that's been adapted with the Muppets in it. But this time it's an adaptation of the story Treasure Island featuring Jim Hawkins and Long John Silver. While I do really like this movie, the only things I really have to say about it, other than the pirate theming and also Mr. Blimbo, I just have one really big issue with it. And it's that this movie did not need to have any sort of relationship drama with Miss Piggy and Kermit. Like, it just feels so pointless and rushed in. There's some other movies that didn't really make use of their relationship, and they were fine because they didn't need to, but this one felt like it needed to, but it really did not. I mean, there's one scene early on in the movie where Kermit's looking at a picture of Miss Piggy, and I thought that'd be fine because, like, it's to represent the fact that he misses her. So then this could have been, like, maybe when they get back at the end of the movie, they then, you know, get to reunite and it'd be all nice and whatever. But no, they had to make her, like, become part of some sort of pig cult. Again, I don't think it's a bad movie, I think it's good, but this one big issue is what's stopping me from putting this above Merge Runs Episode 5, so another point for the MD. Now we have Merge Runs Episode 6, Dead End, versus Muppets from Space, and finally, I got something interesting to say. But before that, I gotta give my individual thoughts on both. So starting off with Episode 6 of Merge Runs, the plot is about Uzi, N, and V teaming up with Tessa and Jay in order to go to the lower levels of Cabin Fever Labs, and also by taking an elevator. And also, Doll stole the key to the elevator, so they gotta go chase her to get it back. Honestly, this is probably my second favorite episode of the whole show, and I think just for two reasons. It's easily the funniest episode, and it has some of the best character moments I've ever seen. Like, not because they were extremely good, but because it made me really care about these characters. I mean, I just purely like the fact that this episode just feels like N, Uzi, and V just goofing off, and I love it. I mean, I guess less goofing off and more like just hanging out with each other, and I like that. It's unfortunate to me that Jay didn't get to go, because I bet she would have been great, but this episode still just worked well enough with N, Uzi, and V. And while she wasn't in it for very long, I did really like Alice, and part of that reason might be because she reminds me of Engineer Thinking Workers too. And when I say this episode was the funniest one, I mean it for like two jokes in particular. The first one of these is when they're first going down into the cave, and N asks if the secret elevator is labeled, which sounds really stupid when you first hear it, because why would a secret elevator be labeled? But then we find out in just a little bit that it was actually labeled. I think V also twitching her eye makes this joke just a lot funnier because she's mad about the fact that N was right. And while I'm gonna talk about it again later, I really like jokes that kind of just start at one point and don't fully finish until a bit later. Now, if any of you guys have watched Merge Runs already, you probably know what the next joke I'm gonna list is, but for those who haven't, I'll just let it play out for you.
Shoot the baby immediately.
But yeah, this episode's great, and it's easily one of my favorites in the entire show. Now for Muppets in Space. The movie's about Gonzo, who wants to figure out what he is because it's been a long-running joke in the Muppets that no one really knows what exactly Gonzo is. However, based on the title of the movie, and also what it's set up to be, it's revealed that Gonzo is actually an alien. And this random guy who wants to prove that aliens are real tries to kidnap Gonzo so that way he can do that. Now, for a space-related movie, there sure weren't too many moments that were related to space, but the few that there were pretty cool. It's also funny to me that when the aliens try to communicate with Gonzo, we as the viewer also see what's going on, so we completely understand Gonzo's view. But then as soon as he starts describing what's going on with him to anyone, he immediately starts sounding like an insane person. However, I like this movie so much because of the fact that it treats the Muppets like they're a family, and I kind of just like that idea that they all live together and that they're all like one collective group. Every movie before this still had the Muppets in them, but it did make them feel like they were just replacing roles of different characters, with the exception of the original and also Take Me in Hand. I sympathize with Gonzo with how he's the only Muppet that doesn't have any family that he knows of, and then he has to go out of his way to find that family, only to realize that he always had a family in the Muppets, which is honestly just a really sweet message. You know, other than this, my only real issue with the movie is that there's just not any songs. Like, no original songs. All the songs in this movie are just copyrighted songs that already exist. But yeah, it was genuinely like such a fun movie to watch. I have really no problems with it, other than, you know, what I just listed. And to be honest, this was probably the hardest decision to make over whether I would choose Mer Jones Episode 6 over this movie. However, in the end, I decided to go with both. Yes, this is the first, and I promise you, only time this will be a tie in the video. And thankfully, the next two are just complete straight shots. With the final two beginning, we got Mer Jones Episode 7 Mass Destruction versus the Muppets 2011. Quick side note before we start this next part, but I just wanted to mention how funny it is to me how both of these series made the 6th installment, left for a bit, and then came back with the 7th installment. Starting with Mer Jones Episode 7, and this time I'm not going to bother doing a summary for it, because if Amazon doesn't think they should do a summary for it, then neither will I. Now the thing is, I think there's a lot of really good things about this episode. Like, for one, the horror moments are just really good. Like, for example, this one in the church where this one guy thinks that everyone is just doing what they should do, and everything's normal until he realizes that everything was just an illusion. However, there's one thing that keeps me from thinking this episode is great and just lets me think it's good. And it's that outside of the few times that we do get it, there's not really that much character to this episode. Obviously, there's the moments with Lizzie, Thad, and Con, which are great. However, when it comes to just like the main cast of characters that we follow throughout this episode most of the time, there's not really anything that they do that's character noteworthy. I mean, I don't really have a problem with them doing story first over characters, but I feel like they should still balance the characters well enough, you know? I mean, Uzi, for example, for the entire episode just kind of feels like she's a nothing character until the very end, where I feel like her personality actually is showing. And you see, before I actually got into this show, this was for some reason the first episode I decided to watch in whole, and I feel like maybe that could be part of the reason as to why I don't really like this episode as much, because I just decided to watch it first and it probably left a bad taste in my mouth without knowing the other context behind it. This is more so just a me thing, but I also don't really like the fact that there's not really that much jokes in it. Because even though there's a lot more serious scenes, which is I understand what they were going for, I just like the more lighthearted, comedic tone of the series. I'm not saying I needed to interrupt serious moments, I'm just saying it would be nice to have more of them, you know? However, this episode still, again, has its strengths, because aside from the horror, the action sequence at the very end was still very good, and the character moments that we do get when I don't feel like there is that much of them are still pretty good. I mean, the amount of times End puts off trying to hurt Uzi in any sort of way just shows how much he cares for her. So yeah, still a good episode. Now, while to me, Mer Jones Episode 7 didn't really have the balance of humor and seriousness I was looking for, the Muppets 2011 provides me exactly what I wanted from that episode. The movie is about Walter, a kid who became a really big fan of the Muppets, and one day actually got the opportunity to go see the Muppet Studios. However, when he's there, he encounters the main villain of the movie, who's trying to demolish the Muppet Studio for oil. So he goes on a mission to get the Muppets back together and to get enough money to buy back the theater. Like I said earlier, this movie does a really good job at combining comedy with another aspect of it, and that aspect being the emotion, which I think is done extremely well in this movie. I mean, I already knew this movie was going to be great when I saw the opening sequence and how well it introduced to Walter and Gary's relationship. This intro shows how Gary always had Walter's back when they were younger, and I think that's just a really nice thing to see. I also like the B-plot of Gary letting go of Walter for a little bit, just so that he can finally spend time with his girlfriend, since most of the time he's been choosing Walter over her. Though, once again, the Muppets are still the best part of the movie, providing entertainment in their own unique way that makes them special from one another. Also, the songs in this movie are generally some of the best in any of the movies so far. Life's a Happy Song is a great song to introduce the vibe that this movie is going for. Pictures in My Head is a beautiful, emotional song that I love so much. Let's Talk About Me is a perfect villain song for Texas Richmond. Manor Muppet is a great development song for Gary and Walter. And of course, the rendition of Rainbow Connection for this movie. Absolutely beautiful song. I have got nothing else to say. It's just good. It's just good. Just listen to it. This is good. Also, speaking of Tex Richmond from earlier, he's probably one of my favorite Muppet villains ever. I love how comically evil of a business CEO he is, and I also just love the fact that whenever he makes a joke about trying to maniacally laugh, instead of actually maniacally laughing, he just says maniacal laugh. I also really love the ending, with it showing how far the Muppets have truly come to make themselves known. And it shows us how much people actually care about these guys, even though they've been irrelevant for years. Genuinely, I love this movie so much. It's not just my favorite Muppet movie, but it's like my favorite movie of all time right now. And I certainly doubt anything will ever beat this movie in terms of how much I like it. Also, this movie has a Minecraft Steve, Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, and Vector from Despicable Me in it, so it's automatically a great movie. Yep, no surprises here. The Muppets beat Murder Jones by a long shot. And finally, to end things off, we got Murder Jones Episode 8, Absolute End versus Muppets Most Wanted. Starting with Murder Jones Episode 8, this is easily the best episode, in my opinion, of the entire show. The visuals, the action, the horror, the comedy, it's everything that I would ever expect out of a Murder Jones episode, and then some. Of course, the best and most focused on aspect of this episode is the fight sequence with the disassembly drones Uzi and Sin, which is extremely well animated and just extremely fun to watch. I think everyone can agree on the fact that Sin is easily the best aspect of this whole episode, by the way. I love that she's just one of those characters where if you look at her the wrong way, your life is over in like 5 seconds. I mean, you can't say a villain with this design isn't good in any sort of way. I mean, wearing the skin of your previous owner is pretty badass, if I have to say so myself. Honestly, that's all I have to say. It has everything that I love from a Murder Jones episode and Sin, so it's automatically one of the best ones in the whole show. Okay, controversial take incoming, but I did not really think that Muppets Most Wanted was a great movie. I think it's a good movie, don't get me wrong. It has elements of it that I really enjoy from most Muppet movies, but I just don't think that the movie as a whole is great. In particular, it has 3 issues that I personally have with it that make it a good movie for me and not a great one. My first problem is that it kind of feels like it gets rid of the great feelings I had from watching the Muppets 2011, because at the very end of the movie, it's revealed that all of this was in-universe, just a movie as well. And it makes me go back to the Muppets 2011 and go like, okay, that was a really good movie, but knowing that it was all just fake was like, it was kind of sad to me. All the feels, all the vibes I got from that movie are just gone now because I know that it was all fake. I know this movie likes to make fourth wall breaks, and I don't really have a problem with that, but like, this one's just too big of a one for me to pass off. My second problem is that they don't actually do anything with the C-plot in this movie, that being Sam the Eagle and the French dude. I mean, I guess you could say they're comic relief, but it kind of just feels like they were wasted potential for the movie. Like, I understand it's important for the main characters to do it, but why not they be the ones to take down Constantine and Dominic bad guy in the end, rather than just arresting them at the last minute? All they actually do to affect the movie's plot is towards the end, where they accidentally arrest Kermit and Fozzie because they believe that they're the culprits, and so they just stop them for like, I don't know, a few minutes. I mean, they were definitely very fun to watch. I just wish they actually got something to do. And now my biggest personal preference with this movie that I dislike is the plot itself. And for those who are asking, the plot is about the Muppets going on tour with the help of this guy named Dominic Bad Guy. However, he's actually working with this evil frog character named Constantine, and their plan is to distance Kermit away from the other Muppets so that way Constantine can then replace him and they switch spots for a while, with this all culminating to be a plan to steal the crown jewels from England. I generally don't really like plots in which the main character gets replaced with the villain or some other character like that, and then every other character is just not knowing about that fact. I mean, like, yeah, I get it. For the first few minutes, it's like, yeah, you know, they wouldn't expect it. It makes sense. But then as the movie goes on, it's like, okay, how are you not realizing? Like, he literally said that just do whatever you want. That's not something Kermit would do. Why wouldn't you, like, question him or anything? It's not that I think Constantine's a bad villain. He's the best part of this movie, easily, but I just think that all the other characters in this movie are just acting so oblivious and stupid. And also, this is nothing really against the movie itself. It's just that I don't like these kinds of plots. I just don't. Again, mostly just personal preferences, nothing actually wrong with the film itself. However, for as negative as I've been being so far, I really do like aspects of this movie. One of those, of course, being Constantine, being the main villain. I think Constantine might actually be my favorite Muppet villain in the entire movie series. There may have been other villains that were very smart and clever, but I think he manages to do that while also being really entertaining at the same time. I mean, his villain song with Dominic is literally just about how he thinks he's better than him, which honestly is just really true. The scene where Constantine double-crosses Dominic after Dominic fails to do it properly is just still one of the best scenes in the movie, and it's really funny. And of course, something else about this movie that might actually be the best scene in the movie is the scene towards the end of it. In this scene, in order for Miss Piggy to identify who's Constantine and who's Kermit, she asks them both the same question of, "Will you marry me?" Constantine responds with the generic, "Yes, I do," while Kermit is very confused and doesn't really know how to answer this. And she knows that Kermit not knowing how to answer, that's the real Kermit. This scene just proves to me that Miss Piggy has been paying attention to how Kermit acts throughout the entire movie. Constantine always acts like he loves everything that Miss Piggy does and that he'll do anything for her. However, Kermit's always been a bit more touchy on the subject, which is why he didn't ever agree to marrying her in the first place. And it makes me so glad that they didn't go with the classic cliche answer of her choosing Constantine over Kermit just because Constantine says for sure that he wants to marry her, and might be the best showcase of Kermit and Miss Piggy's romance throughout the whole movie. However, once again, like I said earlier, I don't think that this movie is really great. I think it's very good, but not great, which is why I'm going to give this final point of the video to Murder Drones. I think everyone can agree, though, that both main villains from both the episode and the movie are the best thing ever. And that concludes the end of the list, and based on the results, the winner is Murder Drones with a score of 4.5. I think I just found Murder Drones overall to be like a more enjoyable show. Not to say I don't find the Muppets enjoyable. I mean, I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't find the Muppets enjoyable. I just think that Murder Drones has more stuff I like about it compared to the Muppets, because it feels more in line with my sense of humor than I feel like the Muppets does. And I know humor's not all of it, but it's a big part of it for me. Now the video's about to wrap up, but just before I go, I wanted to say some things about upcoming news related to both Murder Drones and the Muppets. First of all, the Glitch Direct came out, and as of right now, the reaction video I made for it should be out. And when that released, we got the news that Murder Drones is going to have an official music video with the Living Tombstone, which I think is really cool, and I'm very excited for that. And with more exciting news, there's rumors about how The Muppet Show might actually be coming back soon, with Seth Rogen being one of the people to help out with that. While I haven't watched much of The Muppet Show, I feel like I'll just watch this season purely out of how much fun I've had watching the series. But anyways, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more, and like if you enjoyed the video in general. If you want more people to see this video, then please hype it for me. That'd be greatly appreciated. And of course, if you want to stay tuned for any videos that I make in the future, turn on all notifications so you don't miss a video I make. Anyways, happy Thanksgiving, because this video will most likely really be released before Thanksgiving, and goodbye.